My name is Danielle Metcalfe, and Art by Artist Instagram have requested me to do this interview, and I'm basically just going to answer some questions that they've sent over to me and just talk about myself and my practice. So like I said, my name is Danielle Metcalfe. I'm a visual artist from Newcastle, England. And I moved up to Glasgow, up in Scotland, in the year 2015. And I basically moved up to Glasgow to study paint and printmaking at the Glasgow School of Art. Since I graduated, I've lived between the two cities, Newcastle and Glasgow. But I am based in Glasgow where I live and work. And I have a studio in Glasgow's East End. The next question is, what is your background? How does this impact how you see the world and create art? So my background is I'm British. I grew up in a very northern city called Newcastle. Growing up in Newcastle was as very working class as it comes, to be honest. I am part of a very large family, as I am one of 7. We didn't have a lot growing up. Like, we grew up in flats, which was kind of hard fitting a family of 10 in a 3-bed flat, but we made it work, kind of. My mum and dad owned a little fruit and veg shop in Whitley Bay, and often my mum was working other jobs to pay the bills and stuff, bless her. Like many working class families, as soon as you're able to work, you're put to work. So I learnt the value of hard graft kind of early on in life. Hated it at the time, but looking back now, I'm grateful for it. Character building, as they say. We were, still are, this classic dysfunctional family with family issues, problems. It's like a real life soap drama. They are definitely not boring, but they are all lush. I had a very, very close relationship with my granddad, Michael, when I was wee, which I believe stemmed my interest into the arts. I knew early on in life I wanted to be an artist, but I was a bit delusional when I was wee, as I only thought artists were singers. This was back around the time that Top of the Pops was always on the telly. But yeah, he taught me first to play the guitar and then to draw. I strictly remember having this tiny little bureau type desk that used to keep all my drawings in, mainly portraits of singers. God, I was such a weirdo. But yeah, being creative just came easy to me and I loved it. I was a little bit of a nerd in school, not because I was dead clever, but just because I loved school so much. It was like a little escape for me. Seeing your mates, and there were certain teachers that were class and saw my potential and helped me nurture it. I was very lucky on where we lived. I ended up getting into very good schools in my catchment area. Like, my other siblings weren't so lucky with this. People used to call these schools the posh schools, well, as posh as state schools could be, but I loved it. They nurtured sports, art, history, textiles, everything I loved at the time. I never thought anything of this, thought all schools taught the same level of education, but looking back now, I'm very grateful for those years there, as some of my family members didn't have the variety that schools teach or taught me. But yeah, I was just none the wiser that other schools had different curriculums and taught different things. I just thought all schools had the young kids had the opportunity to learn any art that they wanted to. Like, they had the option to do textiles and media studies and art and all that, like all the fun subjects that I realised that you could do in high school, but it's just like not the case in all the schools. So I was very, very lucky with that, because it's definitely that those are the reasons why I went on to do art. For sure. But yeah, my dad was artistic as well. He studied at the Polytech when he was wee. But like, I never really saw him draw, because he was just always grafting all the time to pick up a pencil. But I'd always say to him now, he'd make a great conceptual artist, as he's got the gift of the gab. Something I don't feel as though I have that much of, which I would like some of that from him. So, but my mum didn't have an artistic background, but she did have a great mind for plants. Obviously, the supermarkets came into play when my parents owned the fruit and veg shop, so they changed it into a plant shop. and I remember her doing all the flower arrangements, and I used to work with her in the shop as well. And yeah, I used to be in awe at her. Like, she has such a good eye for stuff like that, and it, honestly, she was amazing. But yeah, I definitely feel as though, even though we didn't have a lot growing up and it was very like nose to the grind all the time, I do believe that like being from a large family and having to like live by shy Ben's getting out all the time, like you have to speak up, so maybe become very like a people person. And obviously when you don't have that much, like you're always a bit of a dreamer. So I was definitely the biggest dreamer in the family. I was always like wow to everything else. Why everyone was like miserable. They would always call me the smiler, and I would always be laughing and stuff like that, even like at the worst times. So yeah, I definitely feel as though if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be the way I am. But yeah, I don't know, you like, obviously you always talk about your background and like reminisce about it, and then we're obviously talking about it right now, you're like, oh, I am glad that I had that upbringing, because clearly it's made me into like a good person. But rethinking about it, you're like, fucking hell. It's not the best, is it? Did your upbringing promote a specific reference point within your work? And is your work informed by certain concepts or themes from your childhood, background, social, economic status, and where you lived or were raised? So looking back now, my upbringing stems into my work massively. I really never questioned my upbringing too much until I went to art school. I wasn't too aware, I was a bit naive and wasn't too aware of such a huge class gap. But it was staring right at me all through uni. It was a bit intense. In 2018, I was obsessed by music and clubbing, and I was looking more into the idea of escapism, all from a working class viewpoint. It then led me to make my first proper painting that I really loved, called The New Monkey, which looked into a subculture music scene embedded in northeast England called Makina. I grew up on this genre music. My older sisters and cousins would listen to this on repeat, and it just stemmed down. And it was something I didn't realise, but Glaswegians were also a fan of. It came from Newcastle, and it was for the working class, by the working class, and like for no one else really. There was an under 18s nightclub in Sunderland, which was called New Monkey, which obviously is where my work is inspired from, which kids used to go to and dance all night, and there used to be like live MCs and things. Obviously, like all things, it doesn't exist anymore. The police raided it, classic, and closed it down. But it was the work that I produced called The New Monkey was more for nostalgia reasons, and I love it. But from that, I believe my practice took a turn for the better, only creating work that is a reflection of me in a sense, and unlocking and immortalising my own core memories. In each piece, I feel as though I feed into my interests such as fashion, music, photography, technology, that all do touch upon youth culture still. The question up next is, who are your biggest influences? I honestly feel as though I have too many to say them all really. But some of the painters that I'm currently obsessed with, well, I'll name them and kind of give you a rough reason why. So there's a painter called Nadia Wheatley, which I love her compositional work, like the way she composes a painting and like how everything feeds into each other. I love looking at her for like inspiration on that. Chloe Wise is another painter. She is so good at, I kind of like intertwining bodies in a way, which I do love, like hands coming in from all different angles and how people like interact with each other, and just she has good humour as well. I like her. There's a painter called Andy Dixon. He paints like things of luxury, but like his colour palette is so like intense, like you can't, like your eyes are like gorgeous. Look at him for colour. There's a painter called Andrew Saldago, who I love, again, colour palette, chef's kiss, but more for materiality, the way he plays around with like layering paper and all that fun stuff. There's another painter called Jenna Gibson. She is a figurative oil painter, but she just captures like everyday life so beautifully. Like at the moment, it's paintings of her partner, and yeah, they're just something so simple and beautiful about them. And obviously, again, David Hockney color palette, like really, really like pastel-y, like sickly colors. Like I'm obsessed. But I would generally say my two all-time favorite artists are Ken Curry and Grayson Perry. Ken Curry I've been obsessed with since before I went to art school. If you ever do get a chance to see his work up in person, you'll be in awe. Like it's not like my work, it's very dark and sometimes quite gruesome, but no, I love him, and he does figurative oil paintings, so classic. And obviously Grayson Perry, love his work, like the way he captures social norms and stuff like that, and his humour about it, around everything is quite funny. Like I do enjoy him. Yeah, the list could honestly go on forever, to be honest. So the next question is, what are you focusing on right now? So right now in the studio for me, my space that I create work in is doubled in size. So for the very first time, I have the space to create a series, body of work that I've been sat on for some time now. And this painting series is based around British youth culture, and it stems into all of my interests that are extension of me, basically. So it's like all my sort of like fashion influences, music, class, memories, and all my like humorous imagination is coming into it as well. So at the moment, I'm working on 8 pieces in the studio collectively, and it's the first time ever I've been, like I say, been able to create work in this way, and it's just opened it up. And like I knew it would be, because previously I was only able to work on 2 pieces at a time, and like I kind of mentioned, which I probably will, is like oil painting. It's just, you've got to be working on loads of different things at the same time, otherwise your work's just going to come to a standstill kind of thing. So yeah, so the largest work in the series at the moment is a diptych, which is 190 by 240 centimeters, and the smallest is like 21 to 12 centimeters. And yes, so there's a huge range of pieces, and yeah, I can't really say much more on the work right now. But yeah, I'm just loving the way I'm working right now, and I'm very excited by the series of work that is going to be happening, and just like seeing how each work informs each other, which is great. And the only way I can obviously do that is like working the way that I am, with like a lot of work out on show, a lot of work on the go. And yes, so but yeah, I feel as though when you get asked that question, especially when you're like me, who's just started a new body of work, you feel the pressure of of knowing where it's going. But I do know where it's going, and I know the rough idea. But often, sometimes I feel as though when you think about it too much, and you're like, right, this is what this work is, and this is what it's going to be, and it just kind of ruins the process. So at the moment, I've got all my sketches and drawings and plans for this body of work out and ready to go, and everything's like, canvases are stretched and stuff has started, and it's going great, and I'm loving this body of work. But it's like, I'm excited to see where it goes, and it's not so much like I have all these pieces planned, scheduled, I know exactly how they're going to look, what each piece is going to be. It's just have a rough idea of what pieces I want to do, sketches, drawings all set out, ready to go, and we'll just see. But it should be good. It's the first time ever I'm able to work like this, so I'm very excited. I think the biggest challenge is actually being the artist. It sounds stupid, but it does just consume you. It consumes your time and your mind, and you can never turn off from it. And it obviously is like this beautiful thing, because you do see things so differently to, like, because I've got a lot of friends who aren't artistic at all, and they just think that I'm so, I don't know, like I see things so weirdly. Although like, oh, here she goes again. But you do, like, you just like, I don't know, you're always looking at different shapes, different colours, and like how everything is like coming into one, like in your everyday. Especially I think it's for me anyways, because that is my interest in my practice. So even when I'm out of the studio, I'm always thinking about the studio. So I'm always like, when I'm out socialise, I'm always like, oh my god, that could be a painting, or that's funny, that's really funny. And I'll like write a note. And like recently I was at a festival in Derby. We had down with my boyfriend, and I literally remember like plain as day, literally middle of a set of like a really like wanting to see this band for years, and I remember in the middle of the set I go straight on my phone and I'm writing on my painting notes a painting idea. So it's like it does take over you, but obviously it's part of it. It is part of it. I would say the other challenge, there is a lot of challenges, but that was like one personally for me. Obviously there's huge challenges, such as like being from a working class background is the biggest, I feel. It's hard for you to get ahead in this industry if you don't have money behind you, so you got to work twice as hard, and then you put on top of that it's a male dominated industry. You can't really say much more else on what is challenging, because they are the biggest challenges. But yeah, it's not enough to have the talent, the passion and the drive. So you've got to bet on yourself financially, which you need to obviously work all those part-time jobs you can, and apply for all the grants, and just kind of pray that you've put in the hard enough work to get them. So I'm basically saying the system's against you from the beginning. But this is like not news. Like, this is not new news for everyone. Like, everyone kind of knows this. You need the luxury of time to create the work, but you also need to financially be able to pay for your rent and cost of living. So yeah, being an artist, being a painter for me, is you don't see the money up front, not until you sell. So it can be hard. Like, it is very hard. It can be hard. It is hard. But with all that, I wouldn't want to live any other way. Like, you gotta love it, or you're really gonna go mad. So yeah. Sounds horrible. I made it sound horrible, but it's not all bad. Up next, we have, what advice would you give your younger self? Give my younger self. I would honestly give my younger self so much advice, but as an art take, I would say don't take people's words and advice as gospel. Follow your own thoughts and intuitions. And generally the one that I still tell myself this every single day, which I think a lot of people probably should, is comparison is the thief of joy. So don't compare your work to others or follow trends. Make the work for you, and the rest should follow. Don't compare your talents against other people, kind of same. And because you have your own unique creative voice. So why follow something? Just go from yourself and you'll be good. Another, I would say, it's advice. It's like a tip in the studio for painters. One of the main things for me was making notes of my colours when I'm mixing them in the studio. Honestly, this has saved me hours of my time. So you don't have to constantly come back in the studio and try and recreate a colour that's already on the canvas or already in your head, and you're just like, how do I create that? And you can't get it right, or it's just slightly too light, slightly too dark, and you're just wasting paint and wasting your time. So yes, when you've mixed a colour, pop it down on your notepad, write a little remembrance note, And yeah, you've got the recipe right there when you're back in the studio. Honestly, highly recommend. Have you ever tried any unconventional mediums or techniques? Definitely. I think every day in the studio is often trying new techniques. I always feel as though I know the techniques of painting and how things are going to turn out, but with every brushstroke, it's honestly, I'm like, ooh, that's nice, or ooh, this is new. You honestly just have fun with it. Then obviously there is rule books out there for painting apparently, but it's best to not really pay that much attention and make your own. Obviously, it's more fun that way. But for me, my favourite all-time medium is oil paint. I'm honestly obsessed with the stuff. It's just such a versatile medium. So it's like it doesn't dry, the paint doesn't dry as quickly as it would in like acrylic. And you just have more like, it's more fluid. I feel as though it's more fluid on the canvas when I'm working with it than working with other mediums. Like, yeah, I love it. It's like buttery. Butter on a canvas, which sounds gross, but it is so nice to work with. Like, it just makes me so happy, like, to work with that medium. It is my favourite. I would definitely say, like anything, it does have its cons in the way that because it doesn't dry as quickly as, say, acrylic, if you're layering like a large colour, it does get annoying for me sometimes when it does take so long when you just like want to work on that one piece. So obviously you have to have patience with it. Whereas so sometimes when I'm using acrylic, I'm like, oh my god, that's dried so quickly and I can continue working and it's like great and you get into like a huge flow with stuff. But you just have to be organised using oil. You have to really plan, and that's why it's so good for me like working on multiple pieces, because I can be like, I can block this in, I can do this, I can do that, and it's like everything's going all the time. Whereas sometimes when you're just working on one piece in oil paint, it can be very stop and start, which is not great when you've got deadlines. But I still stand by that it's the best medium, for sure. But lately, I'm enjoying mixing mediums, bringing coloured pencil, spray paint, and collage all to the table when creating works. In my recent solo show was all about experimentation with mediums and materiality and how they can work together to look coherent within the work. I am now working, instead of collage, I am drawing straight onto wood, bringing back the flatness of the work, which I love so much. But I'm also still mixing two of my favourite mediums, so oil paint with coloured pencil. The effects are beautiful, like I do love it. Up next, we've got, do you listen to music or have any other type of background noise while you work, or do you prefer complete silence? Definitely music. Music is a huge part of my creative process and vital for me in the studio, to be honest. I have a very varied music taste. It also just sometimes stems into like my work as well, whereas like I'll hear a lyric and I'll be like, oh, that's funny, or oh, that reminds me of this, and like it's something that I've drawn out that's going to be a piece of work in the pipeline. So it's like, yeah, obviously music for me is a huge interest to me. Like I love going to see live music and things like that, so it does impact my work. But yeah, in the studio, I always need to have music on. It's part of my creative process. It keeps me tunneled in, keeps me focused. But it's like there's a certain type of music that I do always go to when I'm in the studio. It's always quite like heavy techno, which sounds so ridiculous when I'm literally like doing like detailed like oil painting parts and you're like listening to this like chaos. But it works for me. It keeps me tunneled in, focused, and yeah, it keeps me on like eye on the prize basically. But yeah, no, the other stuff that I would listen to would be like rock or heavy metal or something like that. Or I sometimes, not often, but sometimes Radio 6. They've got some good tunes on there. but that's only really when I'm doing like sketching, or I'm doing like nothing painting. It's I always have to listen to that sitting type of music, otherwise honestly nothing will get done. I'll get so distracted. My next question is, what's the best reaction someone has had to your artwork? Hard question. I would definitely say, like, when people react to my work, it's all very nice, and they just comment on obviously the colour palette, the compositions, and a lot of people have said, which I quite like, it's humorous, which, yeah, I love that. But I would for sure say the best reaction to my work ever was when I created the monkey series and the big new monkey painting. I released my first ever print of a painting, and yeah, I had a lot of people buy it, and had people reaching out to me, telling me that they've never looked at art before or thought about owning a piece of art, or yeah. So I thought that was pretty special, and I loved that. Still do. Right, so we're on to the last question. What do you hope people take away from your artwork? I definitely hope that people would find it visually pleasing. Obviously, I put a lot of work into the compositional element to my pieces and colours and all that fun things, all the fun elements to it. So, yeah, I feel as though visually pleasing is the main goal. If you find some humour to it, great. But yeah, I don't think you need to connect. There's a need for people to connect with it at all. Obviously, everyone's taste is different, and yeah, there's this huge pressure on making work right now. Is like, especially with Instagram and all these fun things that you can post your art onto. It's like, is it going to be liked and all this stuff? And it's just like, yeah. Not really making work with anyone in mind. So it's nice when people do connect with the work and do enjoy it, because I'm like, oh, this is my own little world, and this is like my likes, the people I hang around with, like my network that I'm just recreating into an art form. So when people do like it, yeah, it's a nice feeling. So, but yeah. So that's the end of all the questions. So thank you so much for your time and yeah, listening to me. And thanks to Art by Artists for having me. I do have some exciting projects and events coming up in the autumn. So please follow me on my art Instagram, which my Instagram handle is @Metcalfe Studio, to keep up to date. But yeah.